Welcome to Weapons of Chess Destruction. I'm Eric Schiller, and I'm going to show you how to use the most important weapons in your chess arsenal. Have you ever wondered how the greatest chess players come up with their brilliant tactical schemes? It seems they see things that just elude normal chess players. In fact, they are just exercising their deep analytical ability while following a strict regimen of considering all of the moves that might lead to improving their position, possibly even winning the game. Too often, we reject moves simply because we look one or two, three moves ahead and don't see any decisive advantage. Perhaps it's a sacrifice and we don't see any way to compensate for our material. The truly great players, like Garry Kasparov, dig deeper. They start by examining the most forcing moves and see how far that will take them. What you need to do to improve your tactical prowess is to stop rejecting moves just because you look briefly and can't find anything useful. When you have a forcing move, dig as deep as you can to see if it will lead to something good. Most of the great brilliant moves in chess are moves that leave the opponent with little choice what to play. Even when you are simply occupying the stage of the World Chess Championship, or perhaps just playing in your living room, you want to apply the same kind of thinking to your own games that brings success at the World Championship level. That means looking for forcing moves whenever possible. Now, this isn't to say that the most forcing moves are the best moves. Often they're not. But the forcing move usually contains a tactical idea that you can apply at some point in the game, usually in the near future. It's important to examine them at each turn because that way you feed your mind, you set up the patterns so that you don't overlook them later. A forcing move might be a check, might be a capture that must be responded to, or even some other kind of threat. But these moves should be at the top of your list. Then, of course, you may want to consider other moves. When going over games with students, I often ask, when they've retreated a piece, did you look for any alternatives, or did you just grab the piece that was under attack and move it to some safe square? Often the students admit that they were worried they might lose their piece, so they got it out of the way. Of course, it's important to hang on to your pieces, but I think you'll find much better results at the chessboard if you make saving a piece your last option in most positions. Even if you are under a serious threat, capture of your queen, or maybe even checkmate, you might find that if you look around, you can find some way to get to the enemy before they get to you. Of course, when you are under threat, you need to use forcing moves, because if you don't force your opponent to limit replies to dealing with the threat that you're putting on them, then they'll just carry out their plans and take whatever piece or hunt down your king or whatever horrible and evil intention drives them. So, when you go through the examples, in the very starting position, look for any capture checks. In each case, the solution is going to be a capture check, and other forcing moves will also be involved. In each of the video presentations on this CD, you're presented with a position, and your job is to find the correct path to a win. Now, because our focus of attention is on capture checks, obviously they're going to play a very important role. You should look at capture checks first, and in the selected examples, the solution will indeed begin with a capture check. The idea isn't simply to find the first move of the correct plan. That's going to be very easy. But the hard part is in working out the details. You can take a moment to study the position, play it over on a chessboard if you like, and then continue to hear the explanation of both the tactics and the solution to the position. I hope that you'll enjoy these little exercises, and that as a result of viewing the videos, you will pay special attention to capture checks in your coming chess games. This, I expect, will lead you to have better results at the chessboard. So have fun, and good luck. To show you the significance and importance of forcing moves, I'm going to use an example brought to my attention by the late Grandmaster Leonid Shamkovich, my good friend and co-author, who was a superb analyst and tactician. This game was played somewhere in Russia in 1990 between two players you almost certainly have never heard of, Sluchov and Nedobora. Now, black is in real difficulty here. White threatens queen a8 mate, simply. If you put the bishop in the way, white will take it. Again, a checkmate. So, black is in desperate straits indeed. In any position that is fairly sharp, that means there are weaknesses to exploit, perhaps vulnerable kings, and pieces have a lot of places they can get to very quickly. In such sharp positions, you need to be very disciplined in your thinking. This presentation about capture checks focuses on one particular forcing move. But here you'll find it used in concert with other forcing moves. I suggest that when you're looking for candidate moves, you make sure that you include all the moves that are capture checks, as well as all the captures and all the checks and all the threats you can come up with. So let's start by looking for capture checks and see if they'll work. Well, we've got two of them. We have rook takes g3 check, but that's completely useless if white simply takes back with the pawn. We also have rook takes h2 check, which fails in this case to king takes h2. But this is a theme that we might be able to use later on. It's important to look at all of the capture checks because even if they don't work right away, the same move may contribute to pulling off some spectacular combination or even a plain old boring winning line. So we have to reject rook takes h2 for the moment. Well, since we're faced with mate in 1, whatever move we come up with has to be either a check or sacrificing our queen for the bishop just to survive a few more moves. We can dispense with that idea. But there is a check at h4. Now, this also looks rather silly, but wait a minute. Suppose the king takes the queen. Then the maneuver rook takes h2 not only works, it's actually checkmate. So we see how the themes combine to enable us to at least consider the possibility of this strange queen sacrifice. Well, can't take with the king can't move elsewhere, so take with the pawn. Now we have another forcing move, another check. That's what we need. Right there, rook e3 check. White will, of course, block with the bishop. Now, if you are calculating this from the starting position at a chessboard in a tournament under a great deal of pressure, you might not have seen far enough into the position to picture this, especially if you were reluctant to look at throwaway moves like giving up your queen. But here we have an important deflection. We would like to play rook takes f3. That looks like checkmate. Oh no, the queen would capture it. But if we go back to this position, the queen can't capture it if she's not there. And that shows us the correct move, the deflection. Bishop takes e6 check. Well, the king can't move and can't block. Remember, the bishop at f3 is pinned, so no choice but to take off the bishop. Now, if the rook takes the queen, white's still a piece ahead, and everything's fine. But there's a capture check, and it ends the game in checkmate, and a capture checkmate at that. Returning to the starting position, it's easy to see how some players might even have given up here as black, faced with mate in 1 at a8. But by forcing yourself to look at all of the possible checks, and especially capture checks, but all of the checks, the solution can be found. So, throughout the presentations on this CD, you should, of course, look first for capture checks, and in each case, the correct move to start things will be a capture check. But see how the other captures and checks and forcing moves are used to be put together into a combination, and that combination brings victory.